So recently I did a couple of videos about why autistic men should stay single. I'm thinking I might modify those titles or something to be a little less strident. I'm going to leave those videos up because I do think I made some good points. But I wanted to try to explore some ideas that are a little bit more um, proactive rather than reactive, a little bit more helpful rather than despondent, and that sort of thing. And so I was thinking about something recently, I have been very much a critic of um, this notion of being, an alpha male and that sort of thing, and evaluating, alpha. The thing is, people will try to say, well, that distribution of the types of men, alpha, beta, gamma, omega, epsilon, all down the line, that it's not meant to be derogatory. It's just meant to kind of organize how people function in a society and that sort of thing. Yeah, that's true, except that the only people who care about that sort of thing are self-professed alpha males who look down on everybody. And a big realization I had, there's a there's a manosphere creep that I despise named Rollo Tomasi. I was especially disgusted at the way that when Michaela Peterson got a divorce, he started going on this big ongoing tirade about how he thought she was going to turn into the next Casey Anthony, because after she got her divorce, she was seen out in public at nightclubs and events and that kind of thing, which is absolutely reprehensible and disgusting. But credit where credit's due, he did have one observation that I liked, and that observation was that being an alpha male is not necessarily a good thing, because, as he put it, prisons are full of alpha males. And that's a very good point. And it occurred to me as I was thinking through this, have you ever met somebody who was a self-identified alpha male that was in any way, shape, or form a likable, desirable human being? You know, don't get me wrong, there are people who are natural leaders, people who are natural followers, but are those people who are natural leaders, do they ever have to make a big show about how great they are? No. The fact that they're natural, you naturally want to work with them. They naturally inspire confidence. They naturally inspire loyalty. They naturally, they inspire you. Their natural leaders are people who inspire you to work with them and for them because they see the good in what you have to offer and affirm that in working with you. It's a very different, very unspoken thing as opposed to the men who want to pound their chests and that sort of thing. And I thought of a specific example from my own life, that I, as an autistic person, when you're an autistic person, I think when you're an autistic person, you see the world in terms of these labels that seem stupid to you but make sense to everybody else, if that makes sense, if that's understandable. So the automatic, just the natural boundaries, and I don't even mean like the intimate personal boundaries of physical contact and that kind of thing. I mean just the natural lines in the sand that people draw with each other don't really seem to make sense to autistic people. And so as I look at the world of the so-called, the world that would be criticized as the toxic the world of what we would criticize as being toxic masculinity. And first of all, I want to, as a side statement, I don't like that expression, toxic masculinity, because we don't have any corollary, or there's no acknowledgement of a corollary among women, toxic femininity. No, it's the people who promote that statement of toxic masculinity discuss toxic masculinity to the exclusion of any kind of rigorous analysis and identification of what constitutes toxic femininity. Now, are there toxic women out there? Yes, Amber Heard is their poster child. And so we know what toxic feminine behavior looks like. It's just that the people, for whatever politically correct reason, don't want to acknowledge that there's a female corollary to toxic male behavior. Anyway, though, toxic male behavior certainly does exist, and it manifests in different forms in different ways. And one of the big problems I've had is feeling like I could never be I could never acquire that like perfect concept of toxicity that men are expected to embody, because that's what's very curious is it seems like if you're I feel like as an autistic person kind of observing the strange behavior of the human race, it's like there is a degree of toxicity that men are expected to exhibit, and um, and I've always felt like I'm not living up to the man, or I'd always felt like I wasn't living up to the man I was supposed to be, because I was revolted by and disgusted by these behaviors, when in reality I should have been disgusted by them. I'll tell you what I'm giving you an example of what I'm talking about. When I started college, I went to Berkeley, the Berkeley College of Music, and when I was there, we had our move-in weekend, like every college does, where you go up with your parents and they help you move into your dorm room and stuff like that. And so when when we got moved in, I still had a day or so. My parents were still there for another day or so throughout the weekend. But when I got moved in, I started milling about and getting to know other students and everything. And I remember I was talking to this one RA that was, like a junior or some junior senior when I was a freshman. And he was talking to a group of us, and he was telling us about all the weird shenanigans they got caught up, they got into and everything through the years. And he mentioned that he had this one friend who turned 21, and when the guy turned 21, he arranged for the guy to get a 21 mangina salute, which is, if you know the term mangina, is when men tuck their genitalia between their legs and close their legs so that it looks like they just have it just looks like they have a pubic bush and no penis. Anyway, so he got 21 guys to do that, and like the mangina salute is where you apparently, as he told it, it was like, not only are the guys presenting that way, but then they turn around spontaneously, all of them turn around mooning the recipient with this, buttocks and genitalia coming through the legs and everything. And he was, obviously he meant no harm with this. He was just goofing, he was just talking around, telling us about weird antics. But that really made me uncomfortable. The thought of like someone arranging something like that for me made me very standoffish and uncomfortable. And about a year after this was when I got diagnosed as having autism, and a lot of things started to make sense. But that was, that made me uncomfortable. Like I said, he didn't mean any harm by it, obviously, but that made me very uncomfortable. Next thing that made me uncomfortable, and this is interesting, and this is more to the point, we had they had this required meeting that all of the freshmen moving into the dorms were supposed to go attend. And it was, it was the usual thing where your RAs, it was at the Berkeley Performance Center, which is their assembly hall performance space and everything. And it's the typical thing where your RAs get up there and tell you all the rules and all that about how to conduct yourself in the dorms. But then they told us, then they set up this thing where each of the RAs had been required, for whatever floor in the dorms and everything, had been required to set up a community team building exercise that everyone on their floor was supposed to participate in, so as a way to get to know each other and that sort of thing. And I don't remember what my RA's team activity was. Oh yeah, it actually, no, I remember it now. It ended up, it was, he wanted to do the naked mile run, except none of us were naked, and so only a few people ended up getting in on it, but they were just going to run screaming and hollering down the streets as if they were doing a naked mile. And then I think a few of them did it in their underwear. But anyway, like another guy had set up a thing where it's like he had gotten all of the DVDs of Family Guy, which was only like 1 or 2 seasons at that point, and we're going to have an all-night Family Guy marathon. So stuff like that. So this one guy, this one RA had said this was his thing. Now, Natalie Portman was across the bridge. The Charles River separates Cambridge and Boston, Massachusetts. And Natalie Portman was across the river at Harvard, studying at Harvard at this point. Now, this particular RA says, "All right, so what I've decided is we're all gonna go across the river to Harvard. Find this is a microphone. We're all gonna go across the river to Harvard, find Natalie Portman, and see if she'll talk to us." And everyone goes, "Yeah!" You know, this big machismo, macho, yeah, kind of thing. And here's the thing. Now that really, believe it or not, upset me, and it was one of those things where, and if you're following my channel, if you're just coming to this channel, I have a series where I talked about the bullying that I went through in school, and I was bullied by some guys from grades 8 through 10. I was bullied by some guys that would beat up girls for talking to me, and it made me feel like I was just like never ever going to be brutal and horrifically masculine, manly enough. Like it was just, it was, it was, you know, toxic masculinity as social contagion in the extreme. And it really left me feeling like I was never going to be enough of a man because I was not mean enough, I was not arrogant enough, I was not brutal enough, I was not harsh enough. And I had really thought that going to places that specialized in the arts and that kind of thing would get me away from that. I went to for 2 years. I went to a performing arts high school, which got me away from that aggressive masculine bravado, but it also replaced it with whiny, mealy-mouthed, wormy little drama people. You know, yeah, I said it. But anyway. That's to any alumnus that may be watching. But anyway, so I was thinking, well, Berkeley, at Berkeley, it'll all, you know, I'll really be able to fit in at Berkeley and everything. And seeing this huge groundswell of like, you know, it was like, you know, it was like he was, you know, the way they responded, it was like the barbarian hordes were raising up, yeah! And my immediate sympathy went to Natalie Portman. But here's the other thing. I was a huge Natalie Portman fan, and Natalie Portman was my celebrity crush all the way from about, you know, about age 12, 13, all the way up through into college even. Like she was my huge celebrity crush and everything. And I want to be very clear about something. I'm like 3 years younger than she is, so at every time she had a movie come out while I was growing up, and I thought that she was cute in that movie. It was entirely appropriate for me to feel that way. Anyway, I was a huge Natalie Portman fan. I'd seen all of her movies, even the ones that were things I didn't even like, was not even interested in, just for her. So I was a huge Natalie Portman fan, and I don't think I really thought that I would ever meet her or have a relationship with her or something like that. But I think, you know, there was like the fantasy in the back of my mind of like, oh, wouldn't it be neat if we ran into each other at a bookstore and started talking, and it, you know, that kind of thing. And I was so, like, I don't think that guy, that RA, could have ever realized how weirdly painful that was for me. Where this horrible failure feeling of just like, this is what men are supposed to be. When men, it was just like the way those guys stood up and pumped their fists in the air and cheered and all of that. Like, we're, you know, all of that, I thought, I'll never be this level of man. I'll never have this like brutal hunter-gatherer attitude when it comes to women and all of that. I just can't, I'll never be this thing. I'll never be this person. And, you know, you can see in that context how I would start to think, oh, well, if I can't be a quote-unquote alpha male, I cannot, I'll never succeed with women, and I don't deserve to succeed with women. That kind of, how that attitude starts to get fostered. Okay. Oh, and by the way, just a quick follow-up on that. So the reason I brought up those 2 incidents was because, like, I was so upset by it seems silly now, but I was so upset by those 2 things. The 18-year-old, soon to be 19-year-old me was so upset by those things that I went to my parents, and that combined with the fact that I was already nervous about my placement exam, where, yeah, they at Berkeley, after you get admitted, when you get there, they do a placement exam to see where specifically, what specific types of classes you need and that kind of thing. And so I was nervous about that too. So for those reasons, I went to my parents, went to their hotel room, and I told them, I said, I don't want to do this. I want to go home. I can't do this. And, those kind of jitters are pretty standard for kids that are leaving home for the first time, that kind of thing. But my parents, I was really upset, but my parents, we talked, they talked me out of it, calmed me down, talked me out of it, just go do your placement exam tomorrow. Don't worry about anything. We're behind you, and everything turned out okay, obviously. Now, here's the interesting thing. Uh, After those dorm activity things happened, rumors started circulating about that particular RA, that when they went across the pond, across the river, they actually did find Natalie Portman. And that just bad things happened, apparently. Something bad happened. And so I remember, like, a couple years later seeing one of the guys who had supposedly been involved in that, and I was curious. I said, "Hey, did that guy, did he really go talk to, the name of person, did y'all really find Natalie Portman and talk to her?" And all the guy would tell me was, "She cried." And that blew my mind. I was like, wow. Okay. But here's the thing. When I saw those guys stand up and cheer like barbarians that are about to go, lay siege to an enemy castle or something like that, I thought I was falling behind because I was falling behind as a man, because I didn't want to participate in anything like that, because my sympathy went to Natalie Portman in that situation. I thought, that was, for a long time, I thought that was an example of me being a beta male, a beta cuck, and all of this. That, I was falling, I should have, like, if I was a real man, if I was really masculine, I would have, I would have stood up like I was raising my broadsword and cheered, in this very arrogant and loud way and everything, and gone along with that. In reality, no, no, that never should have happened. I don't know the exact details other than she cried, but that never should have happened. Like, the nanosecond that the nanosecond that he announced that that's what he was going to do, he should have been taken aside by somebody in charge. Like, the RD, the guy that runs the whole thing, was there. He should have taken him aside and been like, "No, you cannot do that. You cannot take 36 horny college freshmen and have them start combing Harvard looking for Natalie Portman. What the fuck is wrong with you?" Like, that is stalking. And that's even, I mean, you could even make a case that that's aggravated stalking, because he got other people to go along with it. And it's like, there's a reason we have boundaries and rules in society to deal with things like that. And people who disregard those boundaries are not better people. People who disregard those boundaries and think that it's funny to disregard those boundaries. I'm not talking about autistic people where social conventions don't make sense. I'm talking about the boundaries we have of human behavior, where you have to do this, laws and legal regulations, that kind of thing. We have those boundaries in place to prevent these things. And the people who think it's funny to flaunt those boundaries are not alpha males. They're not ubermensch, proud ubermensches that are making, choosing their own path and their own destiny, supermen, and that kind of thing. They're not better than everybody else. They're worse than everybody else. They are the people that those laws are in place to restrict. And that guy could well have been, some kind of sociopath or deranged in some way, or he could have been, autistic himself and just not been properly guided or something like that. But there was something, I realize in retrospect, there was something wrong with that guy. who there was something wrong with that guy, and there was and the young men that he was getting to go along with that whole thing, that he was going to take along with him on that thing. They were just incredibly immature and with raging hormones and incredibly immature. That kind of thing. It was not a failure on my part that my sympathy went to Natalie Portman in that situation. And what's funny is there are people out there, there are very toxic people out there, again, the self-professed alpha males, the ones who will, for a nominal fee, be happy to teach you how to be an alpha male and all that bullshit, the Andrew Tates of the world and that sort of thing. There are men out there who will try to argue you into the ground that that's what they think men are supposed to be. And no, a fully realized, in fact, I referenced Nietzsche earlier with the Ubermensch thing. If you think that's what Nietzsche was going for, you're reading Nietzsche incorrectly, because Nietzsche was actually arguing for a full synthesis between Ubermensch, or master and slave morality, that self-realization comes from finding a balance between the two, not just being an arrogant asshole that kicks everybody over. So I was thinking about that today, and I thought it was a good example to share. And the ultimate epilogue for all of that was, of course, I went through my experience. I mean, I went through the placement exam at Berkeley and had lots of great experiences in my 4 years there and that kind of thing. So anyway, just food for thought and something to think about, because I think that a lot of, we talk about, there's so much talk about helping autistic children, but as Max Derritt who is a YouTube commentator that talks about autism, has pointed out, all of those resources disappear the nanosecond you turn 18. So there's not a lot to help autistic men, and I think that's very much needed and necessary. And the simple answer, then, the thing to always remember when you hear about alpha male bullshit, or I know sigma male is like the cool new thing now and all that, whenever you hear about all that bullshit, one, obviously you're either hearing that from somebody that wants your money or somebody that was already dumb enough to give them their money. But that's one thing to remember. The other thing is that the quality of human being that you are is not determined by how much of a loud, braggadocious asshole you are. That it might seem on the surface like that is, that's maybe superficially desirable in some way, and it is true that people there are people who are going to have a stronger presence than others, and they're going to be more forthright and more assertive than others. But it's very different that is very different from just assuming that you're automatically a good person because you're being a loud, braggadocious asshole. Again, the Andrew Tate perspective and that kind of thing. And I think that is something that sorely, that for autistic men, understanding that is so much better. That the perfect summary for it is a quote that I heard from, of all people, Dr. Phil, but it's just a perfect quote for this. Respect is earned because of the person you are, not the monster you become. And that's so true. That is so true. The self-professed the self-professed alpha males of the world, the people who really care about this stuff, the people that need to get up in your face and call you brah and things like that. Would you want to hang out with one of these people? No. So why would you want to be one of these people?